Fantastic. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our weekly lecture here at America House. For those of you who are here in person, a couple of people might still come trickling in, but we'll get started with our guest today. And I see that we have quite a few people with us online as well. So this evening's presentation is about how to create a portfolio for film, theater, and arts programs in the United States. And we have wonderful panelists today from the New York Film Academy, Lizzie Sack, Joey Zangardi-Dixon, Claude Kervin, and David Mager. I'll let you guys say a couple more words about yourselves, but just in terms of the format, our panelists are going to speak about what they are looking for in a portfolio when they are reviewing them, and then at the end we'll have time for questions and answers, both in the room and also if you're joining us online. At the end you'll be able to type your questions into the chat box and we will answer them. So without further ado, Lizzie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Nellie. Hi, everybody. My name is Lizzie Sack. I'm the Associate Director of Strategic Initiatives here at New York Film Academy. And part of my job is to travel to countries such as Ukraine. I was just there last month and hold live auditions and portfolio reviews and information sessions about the New York Film Academy and what we are looking for in students. And one of the major questions I get from students, parents, agents, teachers is what are we looking for in a creative portfolio and how do we create a creative portfolio or an audition. So today I've asked some of the gentlemen from New York Film Academy to join us to help you guys answer these questions. So.
Hi everybody, I'm Joey Zangardi-Dixon. I'm Director of Performing Arts Admissions here. I travel all around the globe as well. I teach workshops for audition technique, things of that sort, but also scout for the New York Film Academy. We go to places all over the world hosting these auditions, and I'm one of those people in those auditions. Quick little backstory on me. I used to work in casting with MTV, Fox, NBC, Nickelodeon. I was an agent for many years here in New York City. Did the professional acting and musical theater world, moved out to our Los Angeles location for 5 years, worked in that location, and now I've been here almost 4 years in the New York location. And I also work in the admissions team to help students like yourself attend the New York Film Academy. I'm also attending events globally and typically throughout the United States that do college auditions. So I sit amongst a lot of other colleges. So hopefully this will also help on this side because I am in communication with what they're looking for as well as what we're looking for. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Claude Kervin. I'm the chair of the filmmaking program here at the Film Academy. I've been doing this for about 15 years now. Prior to that, I worked as a director in television and a screenwriter in Hollywood. But perhaps most importantly for you, I remember being a film student, both as an undergraduate and a graduate. I remember what it was like trying to submit a portfolio. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about how that goes.
Great. Hi, I'm David Mager. I'm the chair of the photography department here in New York at our New York location. I've been here for about 10 years and also have an active commercial photography career for the last 30 years. Also mostly based in New York. I do some travel for Knife. I've been teaching workshops around the world for the last couple of years as well. And also come up with that question often, what to put into a portfolio and how to create it. What should it really look like in terms of delivery? So happy to talk that through today.
So today we're going to talk about filmmaking, musical theater, acting, and photography. And so if you are interested in a different type of visual or performing art, please do let us know at the end and we can help answer those questions as well. But I think we'll start with filmmaking today. So Claude, what generally are you looking for in a potential student's creative portfolio?
Okay, well, I guess to state the obvious, if you have a great film that you're submitting, that's exactly what we're looking for. Best of all, when it's a narrative film, because that's essentially what we teach. We do have documentary courses, but that's not a program that I'm involved with. So of course, having 1, 2, or more films is the ideal situation. But I want just to let you know that if you don't have films, you shouldn't be discouraged. What we're really looking for is a sense of creativity and a sense of who you are as a person. So I'm looking at still photography, I'm looking at paintings, I'm looking at stories that students have written. I'm looking at dance sometimes. Anything that's an expression of your creativity is something that I'm happy to judge. And I remember when I applied to school myself and I was going to a graduate program, I arrived with a couple of films and was shocked to discover that the other people applying to the program most of them had never made films before. I thought, well, of course, at graduate school, you should be continuing something you've already begun. But I discovered that by the end of the first semester, everybody was pretty much on the same level. The technicalities of operating cameras and things came to people pretty quickly. And so having a film, like I said, is the best option, but I see some amazing short stories, and those are people who I want to get in my program, because of course, writing is the most important thing when it comes to narrative filmmaking.
So obviously these students are from a different country, so they may have shot a film. This film may be in a different language. So if it is in a different language, what would you suggest?
Well, if you can have subtitles put on the film, of course, that's ideal. We're all used to looking at films that have subtitles. But even if it doesn't, there's still a lot that I can judge in terms of the way the story is being visualized, the way the performance is, and some sense of the story, even if it's hard to follow without all the dialogue. Obviously, if it's a film that's dialogue driven, that's going to require subtitles to really get a sense of what it is, but I can still judge by looking at a film even without subtitles.
Also, clearly, there's many different types of cameras out there. So can a student, say, shoot a film on their iPhone, or does it have to be a professional?
No, absolutely. I mean, if we give you better equipment, if we give you better lights, if we give you more money to spend on your film, of course, your film will look better. But essentially, the most important things in a film are the story, the performance of the actors, and how the story is being visualized, and all of that can be done on a simple phone.
The other question too is, obviously films take quite a long time to create and finish. So would you accept in progress work?
Sure. I mean, I'll look at anything that a student feels accurately represents them. If you feel the film could be better by working on it a little bit more, trying to do a little bit more editing and maybe fine tuning the sound, that's of course better. But sure, I'll look at things in progress. Don't send me raw footage that hasn't been cut together at all. I don't want to edit your film, but sure, I can look at anything. It doesn't even have to be a complete film. It could just be a director's reel, or it could be a scene from a film that they're really proud of. So it's not even necessary that it be a complete film. A sizzle reel is also good.
Okay, perfect. And how would you suggest, what's the best way to submit those the films, the documents, whatever you are looking for?
Well, usually I get that from the admissions department. They've already fielded this stuff, and they've uploaded it for me, and there's a clear form for me to fill out. So you've made it very simple for me to do. So I don't know how they get it to you, but you get it to me very simply, and it works well.
Usually when most schools are asking for a creative portfolio, gone are the times of DVDs. We don't want anything hard copy. It is best to send either a Vimeo, YouTube link, if you have your own personal website, and if you have drawings or photos, those can be scanned. So I'm pretty sure most film and acting schools agree with us. I don't even know if people have DVD players anymore.
Do you mind if I just piggyback on that as
Sure.
well? Some other thing, when you're sending those links to us or sending schools those links, a lot of the time people will mark them private. That does not allow us to share it with other people. So you don't have to put it as public so that everyone can see your work. But we do need it as an unlisted link so that we can send it to anybody within that has access to that specific link.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sorry. Just one thing before I forget. I get a lot of films submitted to me, and there's no indication what the person submitting it has done on the film. And of course, in film, there are so many different roles you could have played. And so it's important when you're submitting it that you say, I was the writer-director, or I was just the director, I was the editor, cinematographer, the actor, whatever it is, please make it clear who I'm looking at, whose work I'm trying to judge. Sorry.
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Yeah. That was my next question.
Yeah.
We all can relate here. So let's just say a student has really never shot a film. They haven't really gotten any ideas or anything written down. What would you say is the first step to create a creative portfolio?
Well, hopefully at this point in your life, you've discovered some area of creativity that you feel you have some skill at. Certainly you can take a camera and go out and show me how you might visualize a scene or take some still photographs so I can get a sense of composition and light and color. I'm sorry,
What would you say is the first step? I know you answered that essentially.
Yes, essentially whatever, if you like to draw, certainly put your pen to paper and send me some pictures that you've scanned. Still photography is great. Whatever's easiest for you to do, I would say, that still expresses some sense of your creativity.
That's usually what we say when students ask us that, and you can agree, is we really want to see your ideas, the stories that you want to tell, and that's what we're looking at first and foremost. More than
Right, so for that reason, obviously a fictional story or something like that will be better than a paper that you've written for school that's on some historical topic.
Perfect. Thank you, Claude.
You're welcome.
So we'll switch gears a little bit to acting. Here at New York Film Academy, we are solely acting for film. So this is scheduled a little bit more in the acting for film audition, but we will also talk about theater audition as well. So Joey, if you can help me with that, what normally is required for
Of course. Now,
acting audition?
So what's required for acting auditions is going to vary specifically towards the school. For the most case, I'm going to say most of the time they're going to ask for monologues. I also want to specify what the difference is between a scene and a monologue. I find a lot of people aren't necessarily very, very familiar with the side of it. So a scene is really a dialogue between at least two people. So it's talking back and forth with one another. Where a monologue, by definition, is a long speech directed to someone. So that is what we're looking for. This is a one-off. This is just you speaking to one other person in about a minute to a minute and a half is typical. What we ask for specifically here, we obviously offer degrees in acting for film, as she mentioned. We're still a theater-driven program, but our main focus is obviously to put the actor in front of the camera and keep them there. Because of this, most of our students and the industry is not necessarily writing in old classical text. They're writing how we would speak today in contemporary format. So what we ask for is just two contemporary contrasting monologues, about a minute to a minute and a half each. Some schools will also ask for Shakespeare or a classical text. For example, if we're not familiar with Shakespeare, we're talking Romeo and Juliet, written in the 1500s. That's not what we're doing today. I find that typically a contemporary piece lives, now this is sort of a rule of thumb, anything from like 1950s, something that was written from 1950s through today. So that's the stuff that we're looking for. It can be from a TV, it can be from film, or it can be from a play. I personally like the plays, even though we're a TV and film school, in the audition room setting. The reason for this is we don't have the lights, we don't have the camera angles, we don't have the underscoring. Typically, it's you in a room with a few people behind a desk in a small setting. So you have to remember that it's more stage-driven, even though you might be on film. So you can do any of the above, obviously, for us, but I find contemporary pieces speak to the truth to most of us out there. So if you don't have to do a classical piece, I would say straight from it.
I'm also going to add to that as well, since I do auditions worldwide. What the acting program is looking for is not, especially if you're doing a scene from a very famous movie, we're not looking for you to emulate what the actor has already done. We want you to take the piece and make it your own. So don't play Heath Ledger as the Joker, play the Joker as how you would portray it yourself.
Or please don't do the Joker.
Also that.
No, here's the thing: is when we're finding monologues, we're typically at the mercy of the shows that we're cast in, or the directors that tell us what we have to say, or the script that's doing this. This should be fun. This should be enjoyable. This is the one time that we actually get to choose our own material. So this should be a time where you find pieces that you connect to, that you gravitate towards, that you can't imagine not doing. That brings a little of yourself in the room. As she was saying, we're not looking for you to imitate what a famous person has already done for us and won awards What we're looking for is you to be a part of this. And we also want to remember, or we want to think, we're not casting you in one specific show, but you're going to be with us for multiple years. So we want to be able to cast you in multiple things. Know that you've got this broad, this huge range that we can then work with.
I have a silly question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Does it have to be in English?
That is a great question.
That is a great question.
For us, it does have to be in English. Now, many of you may think, but I have an accent. Is that okay? Absolutely. Please don't change yourself. You are the person that we want to bring to these schools. If you do an English, or excuse me, an American dialect, and you do it really, really well, feel free to do one of those contrasting pieces as that. But again, that's not mandatory.
We also have students who have, say, a Russian or Ukrainian monologue, and they translate it into English and they perform. I've seen that as well. So that's a good question.
Yeah.
So the next question is, how do we do this? Obviously, if you're a film academy, we travel, but some schools may require you to be in person. What other ways can a student audition?
Of course. So some schools will do what they call pre-screens, or in many other cases, it's basically putting yourself on tape and then sending that in the same type of format, in a YouTube video, one of those kind of unlisted links. However, luckily, we travel all over the globe. So as she mentioned, she was there last month. We also travel all around the US. Now, so yes, you can submit it specifically through a video submission or meet us in person. Many schools will want to meet you in person at some point, so those are always preferred, but in some cases, it's not mandatory.
Does the audition have to be professionally recorded?
I think that depends. It does not have to be professionally recorded. Similar to the film world, I find that iPhones have better cameras than most of us will own at home anyway. So set it up, but remember that it's still a professional audition. So I've had people, send in material in their pajamas. That to me doesn't speak professional. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a professional film or edited specifically for that. We do ask that you, what we call slate. So before you before you perform these monologues, we just ask you to state your first and last name, the program that you're applying to, and then specifically what pieces you're doing.
Yes, that's always very helpful.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So just in case, if a student has never auditioned before, what would be your first piece of advice?
Sure. Well, luckily, you're not old like me, and you have access to the internet. So the first thing is to find monologues and stuff that is available. We've all watched films. We've all done that. There are great tutorials out there on even YouTube of how to frame. What we like is about a 3/4 length, so about a waist up, so that we can really see your face. That's important. But really, we want storytellers. This is just you having a conversation with somebody else. Now, I can go into a big dive of a full acting side, but I think if you take a monologue and you can answer at least these 3 questions. Who am I? Who am I speaking to? And what do I want from that other person? And just have a conversation with them. This is putting these words in your own body. I feel like I'm going to get on a little track here. But Meryl Streep actually has a quote that she says, where it's not about being someone different. It's about finding the similarities in what is apparently different than finding myself in there. And I think that speaks truth to what this is. It's not about finding the thing that's so abstract and so different than who we are as humans, but finding a piece that you connect to that you want to show us a little bit of yourself in someone else's shoes.
Lastly, the last thing I do want to add, they should be memorized.
Please.
Please do not read from a script. So just believe it.
Always memorized.
Always memorized. So changing track again, we'll speak a little bit about photography. So David, what is potentially included in a photography portfolio? How many pieces, such as that?
Yeah, great question. I'd say typically, between 15 to 25, maybe 30 on the sort of large collection end of the portfolio. You don't want to look at 50, 100 images, and you can tell pretty quickly, I think, within 15 to 20 images, really where people are with photography.
Okay. Do you require, or do you think it's a good idea for a student to write a paragraph describing if they've edited it or what they shot with or what they were trying to portray. Would that be helpful?
Typically not, honestly. I think the images really speak for themselves.
Okay.
And that's mostly what I'm looking for. I think that's pretty typical for most schools too, is they really just want to see your image creation and your ideas behind it. Like these guys are talking about, it really is about storytelling also. And I think just important to sort of show your voice as a photographer.
Okay. Again, the question about equipment. Everyone seems to have a camera in their pocket these days. Does it have to be shot on a professional camera, or would you accept smartphones?
Yeah, anything. I mean, an image is an image, right? You are the creator. So it really doesn't matter what equipment you're working with to send in the portfolio. As Claude mentioned, once you're here, and at most schools, you're going to have access to professional grade equipment, which will, of course, enhance the images that you're making because you'll have more control, more creative control. And that's kind of the idea, right? We want to be able to teach you how to take what you're seeing here and make it happen in the camera. Right? That's part of the whole process. Something else to think about too, when putting a portfolio together, I think it's much more effective to send in a series of work or a body of work than just an individual. Here's my landscape, and here's my portrait, and here's my close-up, and stuff like that. A series really allows us to see that you're actually thinking in terms of a story and creating work that follows a direction. So I would definitely recommend that over just sort of the one-off or greatest hits of photographs that you've created. The other part to that, forgive me if I'm
please.
The expectation is that you're not an expert already. That's why you're coming to school. You're coming to school to learn. So the portfolio doesn't have to be this perfect collection of images. Don't be afraid to put in experiments. I mean, oftentimes I think that tells a lot more about you as a creative thinker than having a perfect solid portfolio.
Great. And what's the best way, how would you suggest putting these photos together?
Great question. So what's very difficult to look at is when I receive 20 different JPEGs that I have to then download each one or look at them individually. I much prefer it in a slideshow or a website. There are a lot of great easy templates to put together, a basic website that we can then look through work pretty easily. A PDF works pretty well too, because then it's just a matter of opening one document, scrolling through it, or even if you wanted to send a PowerPoint, something along those lines. Google Slides is great, and very easy and really accessible. So any kind of format like that where it's not an individual image that has to be opened and looked at and closed and then go to the next one, I think works much better.
Okay. What is your first piece of advice if someone is just starting to put together a portfolio?
Yeah, great question. I think really the idea is to find things that you're interested in looking at. Right? If you're interested in, a great example, sunsets, right? Lots of people love sunsets and are great for sunset photographs. If you don't have a body of work before that, start there. Maybe you have a group of friends that you spend tons of time with, and they're interesting characters and good faces, and you guys do interesting stuff. Photograph your friends, like shoot the process of what your hanging out life is like. There's a story in that. Maybe you enjoy cooking, right? And you can photograph in the kitchen while you're cooking or as you're preparing things. And there's a huge story to happen out of even cooking one or two meals. You can create, a great amount of work just from something like that. So find your interest.
I think too, also advice that we give to students is United States as a whole has students from many different backgrounds. So what you may see as sort of boring, just hanging out with your friends, could be completely different than what someone in Brazil or Japan or New York is doing. So what you may think is boring could be very, very interesting to somebody else. Again, telling a story of your culture, I think is.
Can I add to that too? I think you're absolutely right with that. And I also think the trends that are happening in photography now are about realism. It's not so much about staged work anymore. People are really interested in looking at what's happening in real life and seeing these real moments. And I think a lot of that has come out of Instagram and smartphones and sending imagery that way, where that's kind of the trend in advertising, it's the trend in editorial, it's really where photography is living at the moment. So being in your own world in that moment and photographing it can be some fantastic work. So
that actually leads to one more question that I get. Would you accept a student's social media as a creative portfolio?
That's a good question. It hasn't happened yet. I think you would have to doctor what you're showing pretty heavily if that was the case. I don't think I'd be opposed to it, but maybe there's a separate group of images so that I'm not scrolling hundreds to look at. So, but yeah, I could think of Instagram certainly.
Sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So lastly, we will talk about musical theater again with Joey.
Again.
This is his area of expertise. So generally, when auditioning for musical theater school, what would be expected of the student?
Of course. So it's going to be singing, dancing, and then acting. So typically, most schools are going to require a dance audition, a monologue, whether that be 1 or 2 pieces, and at least 1 or 2 musical theater songs. Now this varies. For us specifically, we ask for 2 contrasting musical theater songs and a 1-minute contemporary monologue, again, which we spoke about before. But some schools will also ask for that classical text or a stage-driven type of show. Many times when we ask for musical theater pieces, we're not looking for a 5-minute song. For us specifically, we're looking more so for about 1 minute to 1.5 minutes. Some schools will require what they call a 16 or 32 bar cut. This is just a cut about 1 minute or less, depending on what they're allowing. But we'll get into that if you guys have questions later. But for those musical theater songs specifically, the best thing to do is find not just the highest, loudest, beltiest note that you can do. I will tell you honestly, I just got back last week. I watched 3,000 auditions in 4 days. So when you have people that literally are singing and like just loud, and all of a sudden you have a person that is storytelling and eases into this, but then gradually gets us up to that, it is so refreshing and wonderful. I will tell you, if somebody came in and just started screaming in the room for an hour and then somebody started to talk to you, that's what we're looking for. Find something that allows you that story. So when you're finding cuts, this doesn't have to be the highest, loudest note. The given in a musical theater audition is that you have to be able to sing, or that you should be able to sing. So we're already assuming before you walked in the room that you can sing. What is not necessarily always the given is whether or not you can act that piece. So when you're telling that story, treat it like a monologue, but we do it in song. So again, answer some of the same questions. Who am I talking to? What do I need from that other person? And again, put that person in front of you and have that conversation just with song.
Just to be clear, it's a musical theater song, not Ariana Grande.
Correct. Some places may allow you to do a pop rock song. There's with Hamilton's and a lot of these jukebox musicals that are coming to Broadway. Sometimes people will allow that. I will tell you honestly, it shows me that you know musical theater if you do a musical theater song versus just the pop rock. Now in our program, we do pop rock. So it's not that we don't want to, we're not excluding that from your education, but for me specifically, it allows me to know that you are a musical theater person and that there's a piece of you that understands musical theater as an art form.
What about backing tracks or with a piano? How would you prefer that?
Great question. So with backing tracks, if you're on the road, like when we go to Ukraine, for example, we obviously will not carry a piano with us or a keyboard. So in those cases, we'll definitely want you to bring backing tracks. These are not pieces where somebody's singing along with you. This is a karaoke track, if you will. If you're doing auditions on campus, typically you will be bringing in sheet music in the correct key, but you'll have somebody that will accompany you during that audition. Yep.
So if someone has never auditioned before, what is your first piece of advice?
So the first thing is, I think this goes back to what you were saying before, is the one thing that you need to take the pressure off of yourself is we're not, like when I worked in casting, I was expecting these people to be ready and I needed to cast them in a show tomorrow. That's not what we're doing. We have years with you. So what we want you to do is come in, show us a little bit of yourself, and enjoy this process. Obviously, we want to see you singing, but again, treat it like a monologue. I think that's the biggest thing. And then we go into the monologue format, again, answer those same direct questions. Yeah.
All right. Any
Absolutely.
other advice you guys can?
Well, I think all of us have at some point said more is not necessarily better.
Right.
And that happens a lot when people submit films to me. I sometimes get 5 or 6 20-minute films. Clearly, we can't take that amount of time. And by sending me 6, it's not clear which is the one that you really want me to look at. And so I might be jumping around. So I would say if you could keep it to something that's within 5 to 10 minutes or even less. If one of those films is the one that you're most proud of, just send that one. You don't need to send a volume of stuff.
Yeah, and we definitely, here's the thing, is you have to remember that with us as professionals, we know within the first few seconds whether you can sing, whether you can act, whether you have a story that you're telling as a filmmaker or a photographer. So this just helps us understand who you are and, shows us within a short amount of time what you do.
Any other pieces of advice?
I have one more just with musical theater. I like to call this my high price tag. There are songs out there, if we watch American Idol, The Voice, things like that, they always say stray away from your Celine Dion's, your Mariah Carey's, your Whitney Houston's. It works very similar in the musical theater world. Some schools will have a laundry list of these are the do not do's. Some schools don't mind. But I think when you think about songs and the song choices that you're doing, you want to be able to best showcase yourself, but also remember that if I'm comparing you to a Sutton Foster or Barbra Streisand, or if you don't sing them as equally as well, I would say you're going to pay the high price tag for that. You're going to pay the price for it. So find things that really help showcase you. And live in that same world. Like if you can't imagine that piece done by anyone else, likely we can't either. So if you don't do it as equally well, know that you're going to be judged against that. Same thing with the monologues. If you're doing a piece for that somebody won an Oscar or an Emmy for, The Joker, for example. I would just say we want to be cautious, and if you have questions on that, you can always ask us or the person whether or not this is a great idea. Yep, thank you.
I think obviously each school is different, so you would want to, of course, speak with the admissions counselor at whatever school you're looking for. But I'm pretty sure for visual and performing arts schools, the basics are all very similar. So we have given you basics with a hint of New York Film Academy, but of course, please always do check with whichever school you may be interested in. And I think at this point, we'll open it up to questions and answers. And
Fantastic, thank you so much. So it seems like across the disciplines, you're not looking for anyone to be an expert or to submit their portfolios with professional equipment. What you're looking for is the ability to tell a story and potential for growth and a unique perspective. Is that accurate across the board? Yeah. Awesome.
Also remember too, sorry to interject, but the people that are reviewing these are also teachers. So we're looking for somebody that we can take to the next level, not somebody that's already at the next level. Yeah. Great, sorry, please.
Awesome, yeah, thank you. So let's start in the room if we have any questions here, and if you're joining us online, please go ahead and type your questions into the chat box and we'll get to those in a minute. So let's start here in the room first. I'll have to give you the microphone so we can hear you, but what questions do you have? Yes, hold on a second.
Okay, I have a question. If I'm studying at the computer science undergraduate degree, and I want to study acting, can I study acting at the graduate degree? And
that's actually a great question. It's dependent on the school. With us, specifically the New York Film Academy, if you have a degree in anything, you are potentially eligible to take our master's program. So the degree is important, but so is that audition that proves that you can stand up at a graduate level. So it's going to vary depending on the school. Some schools will absolutely require an undergraduate degree in that, others will not.
Okay.
But in our case, we will welcome that.
Okay, and one more. Are my GPA score is important to take graduate like master's degree with my scores from my undergraduate from another school?
For New York Film Academy, we do not require GPA or SATs. Again, that will differ from each school. But what we are looking for mostly at New York Film Academy is your creative work or your audition. Yes, you have to have graduated from high school, or if you're coming to a master's, you do have to have a bachelor's degree, but we don't require any SAT or ACT or GPA scores. But again, that will differ from school to school.
And I also like to say, Steven Spielberg did not get into his top school because of grades. Here at the New York Film Academy, our goal is to not keep the Steven Spielbergs out of our filmmaking school or our school as a general. So if those grades are perhaps a little bit lower, what we want to see in the other things, such as your letters of recommendation, your essay, or what we call a narrative statement, and then obviously in the performance value, that's going to outweigh the other stuff for us. So the artist is what we're most important first. You also have to remember that when you're coming to a school like us, you're not doing math, you're not doing science, you're not doing those in the master's program specifically. Or you're spending most of your time doing what we love all day, not the reverse. So we also find that people are succeeding in a place where this is all they do and what they love.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can the three of you say a couple words about what versus a bachelor's versus a master's program, what would differ in those portfolios in terms of what you're looking for?
David?
Yeah, I can start with that. That's where we start to differentiate what level you are as a photographer. So in a master's program portfolio, I'd expect to see several complete bodies of work where you've really spent the time, you've worked through the thoughts, the issues, the concerns that are behind the stories and the bodies, and you've come up with final work for that. And this could be work that you've done as a bachelor's student. It could be work that you've done outside on your own, but really you should have much more, like a wider breadth of experience in photography for the master's program. The bachelor's program and the conservative programs that we run here at the New York Film Academy, again, we don't expect you to be an expert or to necessarily have any experience. It's again, just looking at you as a storyteller. How are you seeing the world? How are you, creating imagery? So very different look at portfolios for those different levels of education.
Certainly, I would say that if you're applying to a graduate school, having films would certainly be a great advantage. But again, even graduate programs generally start with the idea that many people in the class have never done this before. And so all the classes start at ground level. So regardless of the level of experience you have or what's evident in your portfolio, I don't think that's really going to be the biggest determining factor. But of course, as you're applying to more and more competitive schools, the better your material is, the more likely it is you're going to be accepted. And that would include also GPA and other things like that.
Great. I mean, I think with the acting musical theater land, there are very few master's programs in the United States that are performance driven for musical theater, and even less, and I think even less at the acting for film level, which we do here. But for really in the acting world, we're just looking for, again, that higher level of expertise. But in this world, it's a little more subjective. So for us, I think this varies. It's more so specific to whether you have the degree or whether you don't, and then what you're going to bring into that room as the audition.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, any more questions in the room? Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Everybody hear me? Yeah, good.
Yep.
So my question is about concept art, and for sure you've worked with concept art during the film production. Yep. And my question is how it should look, the storytelling in concept artist portfolio especially. So should it be like something like in a way of comics, or how can story be just inside the picture? Thank you.
Are you talking about 3D animation?
No, not only. I mean, just concept art. It's not only about CGI. I mean, during the film production process, yeah, just before the scene, there are artists who draw in both 3D, 2D, two-dimensional. And the question is how to put storytelling in a concept artist portfolio.
I think, and again, this is me.
Sorry if it's not so.
No, that's fine, that's fine. The best way to do it would be obviously to scan us your images. And I believe if you have a short descriptive paragraph of what this is going to be used for or what it was used for, that's what we would be looking for as well. But of course, we take drawings, whether it's 2D or 3D, into consideration for filmmaking, obviously for 3D animation, game design, all of those. So I think if you just include a descriptive paragraph of why this was drawn and what it was going to be used for is what we would be looking for.
Or
would you want to see like a more full storyboard in that case, or?
Yeah, there you go.
that's exactly what I was just going to say.
Yeah, I've gotten storyboards submitted to me many times, usually accompanying a script or some sort of an outline for a story, and so I can see what the intention was, and I can try to imagine what the film would be. So, but again, especially in filmmaking, since it's not just about how you visualize, it's also about the story. Having something written and a film is even the best scenario, so we can see the diversity of what you're capable of doing. But I would also say, violence obviously very, we see it often in films. We all go to the movies, we see images of tense violence, but if someone submits a portfolio and it's just extremely violent, I don't think that makes a really good first impression. We don't know who you are, so that's like, that's your first impression that I'm getting from you, is that you're somebody who likes to see people being tortured or something that's just really cruel. I don't think that makes the best first impression.
Same thing for monologues. I agree with that as well. Those things that scare us is not necessarily the best first impression. We only have such a small amount of time with you that if you walk in a room, you scare us and you walk out, we're like, is that the person that we want with us for the next 3 or 4 years? So just, yeah, keep that in mind as well. I think violence is always a fine line to walk.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Those online, we haven't forgotten about you. We'll turn to those questions in a second, but I just want to see if there are any more in the room. Okay, let's check out our questions online, then we'll read them out for you. Okay, our first one. What if I'm a professional actress and I would like to get an MFA in musical theater? Is that possible, and what would be requirements for this?
So great question. So as I mentioned before, there are very few master's performance-driven programs out here. We do not offer that. We're specifically conservatory-driven. So there's just going to be a handful of them within the United States. But I guess my first question to who that might be, I can't see you, but is what is your end goal of having that master's in the United States in this specific field? If your plan is to come to the United States, work in the United States, let's say on Broadway or in a musical theater format, it's not necessarily the degree that gets you that work, it's what you bring into the room that will book you that work. So having the contacts, having the education, understanding that. Most masters, at least with the United States, the end goal is to teach that. So can I ask, is that what your main goal is?
Elena, maybe you can clarify in the comments. Yeah, I can add a little bit. Actually, I was a stage manager in the States for many years.
Oh,
and
wow.
most people that I knew in the States, Elena, if this helps, that pursued an MFA was either to teach or they sort of felt like they had stalled in their career and needed to make more connections, meet more people, get into different rooms. But maybe if you can clarify. All right, Elena, if you can clarify, and then we'll come back to that question.
Great.
Okay, looks like Elena has a follow-up question. Are there grants for this for foreign students? And would you take someone on an MFA musical theater whose singing is not so clear, but whose acting is really good?
I'll talk about
start with
grants. Each school is different regarding grants, awards, scholarships. New York Film Academy itself, we offer a talent-based award, a needs-based award. For our bachelor's degrees, we offer a merit-based award, and we also offer for our master's degrees in filmmaking and acting a special Matthew Modine scholarship. So New York Film Academy itself does offer partial awards. We do not offer full scholarships, but there are other schools in the United States that do offer, I'm sure, awards of some kind, but you would have to check with the school. New York Film Academy itself, yes, we do offer partial award discounts.
But that was a great question about if I'm a stronger actor, can I still get into a musical theater program? I think this is obviously specific to the program that you're auditioning for. For us, again, we don't have the master, so I'm going to talk from a broader sense as far as in casting and or in this musical theater conservatory or degree. If you are a stronger actor and if you are a stronger dancer, sometimes that can help outweigh. If you cannot match pitch, that is a concern. So it really depends on what you mean by not being a strong singer. So I think that's really contingent on what you're bringing into that room. But here's the thing I will tell you, try. The least you can do is audition. If somebody says no, try someplace else. There are plenty of schools, there's plenty of places out there that would love to welcome amazing actors.
Wonderful. If we didn't answer your question, Elena, feel free to add in the chat box. All right, next question from Daria. I'm a screenwriter. What should my own ideas consist of? Treatment, synopsis, short description in 2 sentences? What would you be looking for screenwriting?
Well, again, if you're submitting a feature-length screenplay, I'm not going to be able to read 120 pages. So you might just send me the first couple of scenes from your film, from your screenplay, or the scenes that you like best, and perhaps a description of what came before that. So perhaps both a piece of the screenplay and an outline of the entire story, so I can get a sense of how these scenes fit into the whole. But I'm happy to look at treatments or outlines or whatever you have. Obviously, the more professional, complete it looks, the better for you. But I'm still able to see some amazing ideas just expressed in a synopsis.
Great. All right. And
but please spell check. I like to get the sense that at least you have read your work before you submitted it to me. Sometimes I read work that's clear you didn't because you left in a piece of a sentence that you meant to cut out. You didn't. So at least go through it once, make sure it looks as professional as it can be, try to put it into proper formatting, although that's not the most important thing. I'm really looking at your ideas and how you express them.
I will add to that, obviously a lot of students may write in a different language and then you go to Google Translate to translate it. Not always the strongest option. You should be able to write thoroughly enough in English to come and study in the United States. But if you are using Google Translate, just be careful and be a little wary of that, because some things could mean some very different things and it can get confusing.
Yeah.
Maybe get a native speaker to check it before you submit.
Perfectly.
Yes.
All right. Next question from Daniel. How would you recommend to learn to make a film prior to sending it to a film school for enrollment? Would you recommend just to experiment on my own or read up on it or try to emulate professional work out there?
Well, I assume that the reason you're doing this is because you love films. You've been watching 10 or 20,000 hours of films. So you probably already have some sense of how to visualize a story. I don't know if that answers.
Would you recommend doing a YouTube tutorial or something like that?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's so much information you can gain online. Again, like everybody said, we're not looking for absolutely professional work that's completely finished. But the more you can arm yourself with knowledge, the better off you will be in making your film. So if you want to look at shot sizes and how they're used in a dramatic presentation of a story, or or composition or camera movement or lighting. Of course, all those things will make your work better.
Wonderful. All right. Last call for questions online. Go ahead and type anything that you think of. Any more questions in the room that you've thought of? I guess I would ask, what's the benefit for an international student coming to study film, theater, or photography in the States? Are you looking to sort of teach them the American way of doing things? What experience do you have with international students? I'm wondering if you could just speak about that aspect of coming to study these fields in the States.
Of course. I'm up. So I think New York Film Academy is unique in this approach, as almost 50, if not more than 50% of our students are international. So what students coming to the New York Film Academy get is not only a worldwide net, but they also get all these cultures and different experiences, telling stories with other people from all over the globe. So I think that's really important. Also, if a student takes a 1 year or longer program with us, there's an extension of their F1 student visa called OPT, Optional Practical Training, that legally allows you to stay in the States up to 1 year after your program to study in this field, or to work in this field that you have been studying. So we have many students that will continue in the States and live here. And then we also have people that will go back to their home countries and take the States learning, which I think holds a higher caliber in most places. I think what we do in the States really stands out in other countries.
I will say that I do have a number of students. I work solely with international students. And so I have many students who will come study here, learn the American way of filmmaking or acting, and then take it back to their home country and start production companies wherever they may be from, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, and it gives them a leg up because learning in New York and learning in Los Angeles is really the top place that you can learn the entertainment industry. So absolutely. I don't know if there's an American way to teach.
Well, there is actually, in terms
yeah.
of set protocol and procedures. We're absolutely teaching sort of the American school of how to do things. But we want you to bring your culture and your sensibility to your storytelling. We're not looking to make you emulate films that you've seen here. That's not our intention. We want you to find your own voice. But the process of actually making the film will essentially be what your teachers have all learned, which is the American school of how to make films.
I also think there's another aspect to it too to think about. So anytime you're in a creative field, which is really what we're talking about here, your network is hugely important. And that's what allows you to move forward in your career, is what your network base is. So being able to come and study in the States and grow that network internationally can only benefit you in the long run. I know, especially in photography, as you're starting out, you are drawing on people that you already know to come and work with you, to assist. You never know who's going to wind up as an art director or a photo editor at a magazine or an ad agency, people that you may have studied with who are going to go, oh yeah, I've got this job that this person I studied with would be great for because of the work they did in school. So that network is an incredible part of the process. And as was mentioned, 50% of our students are international. So you're not only networking here with United States students, but with people from around the world.
Yeah.
And I always like to say that this industry is not about who you know, but who knows you. And I think that's a way of approaching a lot of this. It's great if you know the casting director, but if that casting director really knows who you are, or a filmmaker. But the fact that we're within our tight-knit community in the filmmaking world, in the photography world, in the acting world, we're intertwining with all these different disciplines. So our actors are working with the filmmakers, our actors are working with the photographers, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of cross-pollination that we're able to do. So when they do go back to their home countries, it's not uncommon for one of our students to pick up the phone. They just got booked on a major project to say, hey, I know this person, I trust this person, come to this country with me and work on my next project.
I think too, with Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, HBO, it used to be that you had to shoot in LA, but at this point in time, there are so many different film sets and TV sets all over the world that the potential of finding a job in your home country is much higher than it ever has been. I was in Vietnam in June, and the head of HBO Asia was there looking for talent because they wanted to start shooting in Vietnam, but there weren't enough students knowledgeable enough to work on a film set in Vietnam. So with the expansion of the film and television industry in the whole world, it's becoming more and more likely that someone from a different country will be in that country and able to help with the production.
Awesome, thank you. So you don't want to burn any bridges in the performing arts world, is that right?
No, you don't. It's much smaller than you think.
Okay, one more question. Online, how long does it take to study at the New York Film Academy? So how long are your degree programs?
The bachelor's degree is a 3-year program. The master's degree is a 2-year program.
New York Film Academy does also offer 4 and 8-week workshops, as well as 1 and 2-year conservatory programs. And our programs are actually designed to be built on top of each other. So you can always come and start in a 4 or 8-week workshop. And then if you choose to extend into a longer program, we'll take the cost of that short-term workshop off of the tuition for the long term. So you essentially get that short-term workshop for free. So it is a good way to come sort of test the waters and make sure this really is for you. New York Film Academy is a little bit different than most other schools in the US. We are extremely intensive. You're in class Monday through Friday from about 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. and shooting on nights and weekends, hopefully. So it's a good way to make sure that this is what you want to do, and it's a very easy extension into a degree program.
I would add to that in the evenings, you're writing your script, casting your next film, editing your last film. So I'm not going to say it's 24/7, but you can't expect to do anything else besides studying.
Yep.
Yeah, this should be your main focus. We also do offer an Associate of Fine Arts, a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and Master of Fine Arts. Here at the New York Film Academy, we're New York City, Los Angeles, and Miami South Beach. So I think that's important to notate as well.
Great. Follow-up from Elena. How long do I have to study to have an opportunity to work in the US? So this is referring to OPT, Optional Practical Training, I believe. Can you clarify that?
For New York Film Academy, it's a minimum of 1 year. So you have to complete a 1-year program to receive 1 year of OPT. Anything less than 1 year, you're not eligible.
Mm-hmm. So you can remain in the States after your visa up to 12 months, but you have to be working according to that, which you studied. So you can't just stay and get a job at Starbucks or something and work for a year. Mm-hmm.
And to make it clear for New York Film Academy and United States as a whole, unless your school offers on-campus housing, which New York Film Academy, on-campus employment, which New York Film Academy does not, it is illegal to work on a student visa in the United States. So unless whichever school you choose has on-campus employment, don't expect to be able to have a job while studying.
Good. Okay. If I finish high school in the age of 16, can I study at New York Film Academy, or do I have to be 18 to apply?
Yes. If you have completed high school at 16, yes, you can come and study at the New York Film Academy. You do not have to wait till you're 18. Of course, there are some setbacks with that. We do have housing coordinators that will assist in finding housing that allows students who are under 18. We do have to have your parents' permission as well. But yes, we have had students who have started with us at the age of 16. We've also had students start with us at the age of 75. So it's a wide range of people at New York Film Academy.
Awesome. All right. I'm not, oh, yes. Hold on, let me give you the mic.
Okay, I have a question. How can I make acquaintance with casting directors or show them who am I before I apply to some school or university?
Great, that is a great question. So most acting and musical theater programs will end with an industry showcase. It depends on which program. Some one-year conservatories do not offer that. But at the end of every degree program or the end of any second year program here at the New York Film Academy, we do offer, so we bring in casting directors, agents, managers that you will perform for, and then hopefully be able to either sign with them or work with them in the future. That is the end goal. We also, luckily enough, also bring in our friends from the industry. So it's not uncommon for a casting director, agent, or manager to come into a classroom even while you're here. In our musical theater program, within their first semester, we have a casting director already come in. This isn't for representation at that point, but it's to get feedback from the industry, which that person will then end up at our showcase later down the road, or what we call a showcase panel. So some of our programs, like with musical theater, for example, we actually have you guys perform for the agents and casting directors, and then afterwards we have you sit with each one of them in a little round robin to get feedback from them directly. Or in the degrees, we actually have you guys come in, perform for them, and then hopefully they will check off saying that they're interested for then future, hopefully, employment.
I will say too, all of the programs at New York Film Academy have a business component that are added into those. So we teach you not only how to act and how to make films, but how to be a business person after you have completed the program. So we'll teach you how to be successful, not just be good at what you're doing.
Yeah, and how to navigate the industry, especially in acting. We have unions. So is your name already taken in the union? Do we need to find a different name? There are those specifics that we'll go into, not only navigating when you leave, but how to support yourself when you're gone.
But just to clarify, you do not need to have contacted casting directors before you apply. You'll
No,
teach
absolutely not. In fact, really while you're here, the main focus is to study. So when you are done with a program, you are going to be much more accessible to the industry with casting directors, with agents, but also with having a resume and things of that sort. So to come in and already know those people is fine, but you're not necessarily going to leave class during the day to go to auditions. Your goal is to be here because you can't legally work anyway. The best thing to do is come here, learn the craft, then go try to, compete in the industry out there and book work.
Because you said it's better when the casting director or the person who make audition knows you, and I thought maybe I can to know some of them or to show myself to them before I make audition, and is it possible, or it will be after a year?
Not before you get here. Keep in mind that when I made that comment, we're also talking about the other disciplines here. So in our filmmaking program, our students work on 36 films within year one. So you multiply that times all of our students, you are going to be working with writers, directors, editors, producers, performers, cinematographers, game designers, 3D animators. So that is the network that I'm talking about. Who are those people that know you? Also, because we're bringing in casting directors, agents, managers, those are the people that will eventually know you as well. But don't think about putting the cart before the horse. This is about getting the education, understanding this craft, then going out and doing it.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we're going past 6 o'clock here. So I think just as a finishing question, you have one more question. Yes.
Hi, actually, I want to know, because I'm just finishing my school now, and I'm thinking to learn and study acting in USA, but as I know, it's kind of expensive. So is it possible to study in USA without a large amount of money?
I think maybe.
That's a good question.
At Education USA, we could speak with you about financing your study. And I know you mentioned, Lizzie, that there are some partial scholarships specifically at the New York Film Academy.
Yes.
But a lot of scholarships are related to merit. So according to your grades, your achievements, things like that. And we can help you with that at Education USA. But if you want to add anything, Lizzie, go ahead.
What I will say, there are many many options of studying in the United States, but you do have to realize that studying in the United States, even for Americans, is very expensive. It's just the way that it is. We're very different from Europe, where you guys can go to school for free. So yes, it is expensive. There's really no way to get around that, but most schools will have subsidies that can help you with that. You also have to think about, in whatever city you're living in, what the cost of living is. There's a lot to go through, but that's really exactly what Education USA is there to help you with.
And also, as an international student, you have to remember that the government requires specific things for you to prove that you can not only afford a program, but also afford you living. For example, it's like $1,900 per month for living and housing. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend that, but you have to prove to the government that you can afford that before coming over and getting a visa for a full year. Not only is it important for us that you eat and you have a roof over your head, but it's also important for the government before you guys come here that we're setting you up for success.
I would also point out that for filmmakers, there's a whole other level of expense that you have to anticipate. Students, of course, will be provided in most schools with all the equipment that they need to make a film. But as far as rental of locations, costumes, props, all those things are usually part of the student's budget, including transportation and catering and all those issues. Now, the good news is that I've never seen a correlation between the amount of money people spend and the quality of their work. Frankly, I often think people who seem to have endless money think that just throwing money at the screen is going to make their film better. It's not. I find students who are don't have the same resources are often a little bit more imaginative and creative, and put their efforts into the screenplay and the casting, which is obviously more important than the window dressing. Nonetheless, you still have to anticipate there are going to be film costs when you come to study in the United States.
Yeah.
I also think something else to consider, on top of whatever the schools are looking at, what types of grants or scholarships they provide, there are a lot of outside sources that you can look at for scholarships to go to school. So I wouldn't sort of look past those possibilities.
We have had students from all over the world, as Joey had said, who have been very creative in the way that they've raised money to come and study, whether that's crowdfunding, whether they've worked with local companies where they have agreed that if you pay this part of my tuition, when I come back, I'll shoot all your commercials for free. There's ways that students have done it before, but it is something that takes planning and takes the knowledge that it is expensive to study in the US. So.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, my last question, just to finish up. Joey, you sort of talked about this. You know, probably when someone walks in the room and says, I'm going to do I Dreamed a Dream, you probably roll your eyes a little bit.
Especially as a 16-year-old, yes.
People still do that. Maybe that's dating me, aging me.
They sure do.
Okay, I was wondering if in each of your disciplines, if you could talk briefly about maybe things that you see often that just fall flat. Maybe things that young people think are going to be really impressive in their portfolio or their audition and just you would rather not see ever again. But a first-timers' mistakes, let's put it that way.
Of course. Do you guys want to start?
I would say just in general, and this is not just about portfolio, but generally you as a filmmaker, the industry is not looking for you to imitate things that you've seen in the theater. They're not looking for you to make the Hitman movie. They're not looking for you to make the super spy agent movie. What they want to see is your understanding of the world, your observation of what makes people do what they do, and some insight into what you think is true about life. So try not to fall into the trap of doing a martial arts film or something like that, because it's never going to compete with things we've seen on the screen. But you are an authority about your life in a way that nobody else is, and that's what I think everybody's looking for, both in a portfolio and festival films.
Yeah, I mean, just to jump on that, I think we've seen photographs of everything at this point, right? So there isn't something I don't want to see. I want to see it done in a different or a unique way. So, you know, I've seen thousands, especially here in New York, thousands of pictures of squirrels. Because there's squirrels everywhere in the city. But if you can come up with a creative way of looking at that, or a different way of So there isn't a don't do or don't send. It's just, as Claude was saying, be yourself. Show us who you are as a visual storyteller, as a visual figure.
I think the biggest no-no for acting in musical theater is either playing an animal, a fish, like The Little Mermaid, for example, or not playing human is number one. The other one is not playing age and type appropriate things. So remember that if you are 17 years old, you should not be playing a grandmother. You should be finding material that really fits you, that's something that you would be cast in, especially in TV and film. You're never going to play an old woman if you are 17 years old. I think those are kind of the big things. In musical theater, I would say it goes back to finding that those over-the-top pieces, or the pieces that everybody specifically does. But yeah, I think that's the big thing, is age and type appropriate for me. We want to see you.
I would say too, for musical theater, to dig a little bit deeper and not do Frozen, Wicked. We've seen those a lot.
Yeah.
But we want to see, that you know a little bit more about this industry other than Frozen. So if you can show us a piece that maybe isn't as well known, that is a positive thing.
Yeah, and I also think too, like, for example, our staff are Broadway performers. Krista Cates was Idina Menzel's original understudy in Wicked. She was in Elphaba on Broadway. She was in Finding Neverland, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. People that do Wicked for her, she's on our review board for our musical theater program. She's going to, of course, if you do it well, she's going to be proud of you. But you also have to remember that these people have played these roles, so they're going to look at them from a different view or lens.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much. Lizzie, do you have any closing words about the New York Film Academy from an admissions perspective or outreach perspective?
What I will say is New York Film Academy, what we do here is very different than what other schools do. We are extremely hands-on. We are extremely intensive. If you are coming here to learn filmmaking, you're going to do it by learning. You're going to learn making films by making films, by taking photographs, by getting in front of the camera or on stage. It's an experience unlike anything else. There are many of us admissions representatives that are here to help you with the entire process. We also help with the whole visa process, the housing process. Education USA is there to help you with the visa process and what expectations you should have for living in the United States. But we come to Kiev usually once a year. I was just there, so I won't be back this year. But we hope to keep in touch, and if you do have questions, please let Nellie know, and we can certainly get in contact with you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your days. I'm sure you're very busy, but this has been very informative. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.